Welcome to Lesson 9, the lymphatic system and infectious diseases. So the lymphatic system plays an essential role in the body's defense and resistance to disease. And some different organs of the lymphatic system include your lymph nodes, your spleen, your thymus, Peyer's patches, and tonsils. So first we're going to get into just a quick overview of all the lymphatic organs. So first you have your lymph nodes, which help to protect the body by removing foreign material such as bacteria and tumor-causing cells by producing lymphocytes. And they're mostly found in the cervical, which is the neck region, the axillary, which is the armpit, and then the inguinal region, which is the groin. And if you remember anything from your history class about the bubonic plague or the Black Death, they said one of the first signs is you'd get one of those big lumps kind of in your armpit area. And this was because of the lymph nodes basically swelling in the armpits because they were trying to basically take care of that infection. So kind of just a cool little side note, that's exactly what they called buboes, which were these big clumps in the armpit and in the lymph node areas. Then you have your spleen, which is a fairly large organ that filters blood of bacteria, viruses, and other diseases, and it's also a big blood reservoir. It's found on the left side of your abdominal cavity. Then we have the thymus gland, which we briefly talked about in the endocrine system. It helps to program a specific lymphocyte or immune cell called a T cell, T for thymus. And we're going to talk a lot more about those T cells later on. And then we know that it also produces hormones. Peyer's patches, which are going to be mentioned again in the digestive system, are basically little patches of lymphatic system found in your small intestine that help keep any foreign invaders that weren't killed by your hydrochloric acid in your stomach from entering into the bloodstream. And then we have our tonsils. These are found basically in the back of your throat. Okay, you've all had that sore throat before and you've looked at your tonsils in the back to see if they were white or swollen. And they help to trap and remove bacteria from entering the throat. So here's just a nice overview of all those organs that we talked about. So the thymus is kind of right below the base of the throat, really important in T cells. Here's our tonsils right here, and you actually have more than one that just kind of sits in the back of the throat. Here is your spleen. It kind of hides behind the stomach. And then here are those Peyer's patches found in the intestine. So let's talk a little bit more about your lymph nodes because they are a really important part of this lesson. So like we just said, they help to remove foreign material such as bacteria from the lymphatic system. It also programs lymphocytes, which are white blood cells. And like we said earlier, they are kind of clumped together in the groin, the armpit, and the neck regions of the body. And a lot of times when you're feeling sick, the doctor will actually put their hands kind of on your throat area. They're actually checking to see if the lymph nodes around your neck are swollen, because they do become swollen during an infection because they're trying to trap the infection in that area. Lymph nodes contain huge macrophages, and these macrophages like to float around and destroy any bacteria or viruses. Lymph nodes are very small, they're less than 1 inch long, and they mostly have the shape of a kidney. So kind of like a bean shaped. So if we look here, here's just the clusters of lymph nodes. There they are in the neck. Here you can see in the armpit area, and then in that inguinal area as well. So next we're going to talk a little bit more about the lymphatic actual system and the lymphatic vessels. What's really cool about the lymphatic system and the lymphatic vessels is they really work with your cardiovascular system. So anytime you see a major like artery and vein and even capillary beds, you're also going to see lymphatic vessels. And what's really cool about the lymphatic system is anytime you have any excess fluid that's been pushed out of capillaries and needs to be returned to the blood, the lymphatic vessels actually pick it up and return it towards the heart. The lymph on the way is going to be filtered through those lymph nodes, and we're going to see if there's any foreign substances that need to be filtered out before we return that fluid into the bloodstream. So we have lymph capillaries, and these guys actually weave between your capillary beds and those tissues, and they absorb any of the fluid that has been leaked out, and they are extremely permeable, even more permeable than your capillary beds. Lymph is transported to the lymphatic collecting vessels, where they then enter a large duct called the right lymphatic duct and then the thoracic duct. So if we look here, this kind of shows you a little bit more of how we have these vessels. See, there's these vessels that kind of go all over the body. Here's the larger thoracic duct that helps to enter into the subclavian vein, which is right here. So you do have a very large, a huge, basically transportation system that picks up leak fluid from the cardiovascular system to return it to the bloodstream. This is a cool picture because this shows you how these lymphatic vessels really weave in between these capillary beds. So any kind of leaked fluid that's happening between the tissue and the capillaries can get picked up by these lymphatic vessels and then returned into the bloodstream once it's been filtered through the lymph nodes. So now we're actually going to get into the immune system aspect. So far we've kind of just talked about the transportation system. Now we're actually going to get into the immune system. And there's two major types of immune systems we're going to talk about. The first one is the innate, and the second one is adaptive. And this is probably a very, very good chart to come back to because I think it does a really nice job of laying out all the different types of major things that we're going to talk about in the next lesson. So first, let's start on the innate defense system. This is also called the non-specific defense system. And what do I mean by that? It means that this does not recognize specific foreign pathogens. It is going to just be like, hey, you're not supposed to be here. I may not know exactly what you are, but I am going to absolutely kill you and take it away. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a virus, a bacteria, a fungus, anything that it looks at as a threat and a foreign substance, it's immediately going to try to respond to and eliminate. So this includes tons of surface barriers, the most important being just your skin in general. The skin is your ultimate first line of defense. You also have sebum, which is slightly acidic, that's oil. And then vaginal secretions are actually very acidic to help fight any foreign invaders. Then you have your hydrochloric acid of the stomach, lysozyme, which is an enzyme in your saliva, and then you have mucus traps in your respiratory system. So I hope you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Like, hydrochloric acid in the stomach isn't going to be able to say, hey, that's a bacteria, or hey, that's a virus. It's just going to say, warning, 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 warning. This is something that we do not want entering into the body, so we are going to kill it. The innate immune system also includes some internal defenses too, like your phagocytes, which are basically just a class of white blood cells that are going to use phagocytosis to basically take in a foreign invader and digest it. And then you also have these super cool cells called natural killer cells. I just think that's a great name for a cell. And these guys actually just kind of float around in blood and lymph, and when they come across an infected body cell or a cancer cell, they're going to sound the alarm and try to kill it. So this is how one of those phagocytes would use phagocytosis to really take care of any sort of bacteria or microbe. So it's really cool. They become attracted to that bacteria through chemicals that it's releasing, and then they're going to ingest the foreign invader, bring it inside, and then use what's called a lysosome, which is a little organelle that has a lot of digestive enzymes inside of it. It's going to literally break it down, eat it, tear it apart, and then just release the waste out of the cell. We also have something called antimicrobial proteins in the innate system. And this is going to basically help to attack microorganisms by hindering their ability to reproduce. So they basically just block them and don't allow them to keep reproducing. And we're going to talk about the two ways that they do this. It's called complement or interferon. So first, let's talk about the complement antimicrobial proteins. So this is a group of at least 20 different proteins that circulate the blood, and they're kind of just hanging out. They're in an inactive state. So until they actually come across a foreign invader, they're just really floating around, hanging out. And then they cause what is called a complement fixation to occur. So these little proteins are going to attach onto the foreign cell's surface and begin to fight against it. And once they attach onto that cell's surface, they create what's called a MAC, or a membrane attack complex. And I think this is super interesting. What they do is they attach onto the foreign cell's membrane, and they literally poke holes in the cell that allow water to rush in to the point that the cell actually just explodes. So you're literally exploding a foreign invader cell by allowing water to rush into it. And in doing so, this helps to amplify what we're going to talk about in a little bit called the inflammation response. So if we look here, here is our proteins that are coming across our pathogen or our bacteria or virus. It's going to attach on to the cell, and it's going to create literally a hole in the cell. And this is going to allow water to rush into the cell, which eventually causes it to lyse or explode. Then we also have what's called the interferon, and this is a really important antimicrobial protein. And these are going to be released inside of body cells when a virus cell attacks them. So basically what happens is if one of your cells becomes infected, instead of just automatically dying and giving up, it actually releases these little proteins that then bind on to other healthy cells and don't allow viruses to attach to them. So it basically protects the other cells by not allowing the virus to enter into a new cell and reproduce. Another really cool thing that your innate defense system does is a fever. And you may have always assumed like a fever is bad. We don't want a fever. But fevers are actually very normal when we want to have an immune response. They're activated by chemicals secreted from your white blood cells called pyrogens. And fevers are really important because, one, it actually speeds up the metabolic rate of your own cells, which helps in fighting the foreign invaders and helps with your repairing of your body. And also, it allows the liver and spleen to take up more iron and zinc. And iron and zinc are really important for bacteria. Bacteria need those two minerals to multiply and to survive. So fever is really important. We actually speed up the rate of our cells working, and then we take away vital nutrients that are needed for bacteria. So we're going to go ahead and stop here. The inflammatory response is what we'll start talking about in video 2. So thanks for watching. Please rewatch if you need to fill in any of your notes and continue on to our second video.